Hey everyone, my name is Tatiana. My YouTube channel is Reading with Tatiana, and this is my book review for this month for a non-fiction read. It was The Comfort Book by Matt Haig, and I would appreciate you watching this video. The Comfort Book, I gave it a 5 out of 5. Today, my booktuber shout out goes out to Alexis or Lexi Rose Reads. I came across her booktube channel back in December during the holidays, and I really want to give her some spotlight because she is a very new booktuber. I like the content she's put out so far, and she only has 19 subscribers right now, so I hope we can show her support. I'll link her channel down below. And as always, before I go into my full book review, I always appreciate it if you can hit the subscribe button. If you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you have read The Comfort Book or any other books by Matt Haig, I'd love to hear it down below. The genre and the year this book was published. So the genre of this book, I would say, is self-help. It's also non-fiction, and I would say it's kind of like a self-help mindfulness gratitude guide on how to change your perspective, and this book was published in 2021. A bit about the author, Matt Haig. He was born in the UK, and that's where he currently resides with his wife, 2 kids, and a dog. His kids are homeschooled, and Matt also identifies as an atheist. He says that his books are his one true faith, and the library is his church, which I love to hear. He is both a nonfiction and fiction writer. I have read his 2 fictional books before. Midnight Library, which I knew was super popular, but to be honest, it wasn't really for me. Like, it was good, but I felt it was an okay book. But I knew it was really popular among the masses. I will say I do recommend to read it because I think it is an easy book to read to get back into reading. But it didn't blow my mind. The other book I read of his is also The Humans, which I reviewed earlier this year or last year, one of my first booktube videos. If you go to watch it, it was very chaotic because I didn't have a structure to my reviews back then. But The Humans was the first book I read in a long time, or maybe the first one ever, that actually made me laugh out loud. Matt did such a good job portraying how an alien would act in the human body, and I thought it was really hilarious. And he's also a nonfiction writer, so The Comfort Book is my first nonfiction book of his, and I said before, I gave it a 5 out of 5, so I really enjoyed it. And what I think is really cool about his nonfiction books is that a lot of it stems from a mental breakdown he had in his 20s, which he talks about very openly in this book. And I believe he alludes to in Midnight Library in the offer section. So I think it's really cool that he's so open about his mental health and struggles he's had and how he's worked through them. I believe now he's in his mid 40s, so it's been a few decades of his mental breakdown. And he does talk about how it's something that he still struggles with, and it's something he's always working on day to day. So I really commend that about Matt. As this book is a self-help book, there isn't really any characters or a plot. So I just want to share some lessons that kind of resonate with me. I'm also mindful to not share too many because I really think this book is worth reading. One thing I really enjoy about this book is it's kind of laid out kind of like a coffee table or a bathroom book. So each section is quite short. I would say at most a few pages, but honestly a lot of them are just 1 or 2 pages. So it's kind of great to have around the home if it's something that you're struggling with. Just having hope or just being positive or having an affirmation of gratitude. This book is really great for that. So I really appreciate that fact about this book. It's just so great to read, and you don't really have to read it in order either. So some things that resonate with me is the idea of perspective and the external versus the internal. This is something that I really personally really struggle with and also was able to overcome during the pandemic, especially when so many things were out of my control. So this book talks about how you can't really control anything outside of yourself, and you only can control your reaction to it. And external events that happen in your life are actually neutral and only become good or bad when your mind decides to receive it and how it perceives it. So I thought this was really good because a lot of things in your life, like for example in my life, when I was younger, when I felt like people were doing things to go against me, they truly aren't. It's very rare there's someone out there that is malicious and against you. And I also can't control their actions because they're probably acting in their own best interest. But what I can do is control my reaction to their action. And I changed my mindset saying that they're not really doing it to hurt me. It's because they're not thinking of me, which may sound bad, but it really isn't when you kind of accept that truth. And I can really control what I can do and control how I react. So, things is I can control by not lashing out. I can control by having a conversation with that person. And that really helps with my relationships and my friendships in my life. Other quote that stuck with me, which I will share, is to feel hope, you don't need to be in a great situation, but just understand that things will change. Hope does not equal happiness, it means open to possibilities. I really love that because I think even though maybe I probably knew that, I never seen it worded so eloquently, and that, like, you know, people in the darkest places and the toughest times can have hope. And all you need is even just a sliver of hope and to know that things would change. One thing when I read that quote that actually kind of shifted my personal perspective is that if you're in a really bad place now, you know for a fact that you used to be in a good place. So what is true that change can happen to get you to this bad place. So if change can happen to get you to this bad place, why can't change happen to get you to a good or happy place again? So I really love that quote because it just made me shift my perspective on what hope means. Because yeah, before I used to think that hope is always just a positive association, but no, hope is actually, if you think about it, a something that's associated with bad times or negative times because you can always have the hope that things will get better. And the fact is, things are always changing, so it can and will change, and hopefully, it will get better. So that really stuck with me. The other thing that I really enjoyed from this book is, well, I guess just the theme of change is that emotions are like weather and they always change. For example, when you look at a cloud, it may look like it's staying still, but it's always moving. And the other one in this book I like is the idea of a river. How, if you step in a river, it's never the same river twice. And not only that, but you're not the same person stepping in the river twice. And things are always changing. And that's the constant in life. And that really, really stuck with me because, even if you're in a really good place and everything is great in your life, you should really embrace and live in that moment because you know what? It's gonna change and won't always be this good. Which is kind of like, I guess, maybe a negative mindset to look at, but it's also quite beautiful that that's life. And I just really, really love that. Another thing, I guess, to add earlier to what he said about the external versus internal is never seek external validation because you need to get the advice from within and validation from within. And also, don't try to seek validation from people you would even get asked their advice for stuff in your life. So yeah, there's all these things about external versus internal really resonate with me. Another thing that stuck with me is this a timeless quote, which I think a lot of people say it but don't always preach it. So if you're watching this video, if it's something you want to learn, and no matter if you're 20, 30, 40, 50, here's what I'm gonna say: it's never too late. And Matt does a really great job in his book giving examples of people who started skills way later in lives or accomplished big things. I forgot the people specifically now, but there are people like one was Beethoven, for example, and the other was like an opera composer where they really compose their great, I guess, musical feats later in life, like their 50s and 60s and 70s. And yeah, it's never too late. Another thing that also stuck with me is, again, I'm going to quote is, we find problematic people only as people other than us. We're never going to have the courage to transform ourselves. And that's really true. Like, I think, especially during this pandemic, especially with the media, we always other people and be like, they're not like us, they're different than us. And I think when you conclude that they have one opinion that's different than you, and you just assume everything else about them, this othering them, you're just as bad as them because you're now putting yourself on this opposite end of the spectrum, and you're not gonna change because you're like, I'm not gonna be like them, I'm gonna be exactly like me, and you're not open to changing, which is very scary. And I think that's really where our society is headed towards, and I hate it. And I think even if you don't agree on something, there's always room for discussion, and you don't have to agree with them, they don't have to agree to you, but you should at least listen, and hopefully they have the respect to listen to you too. And who knows, maybe you won't agree, but maybe you can at least understand how they came to their conclusion. And I think that's really powerful to do as humans. And then a few other things I want to share. I swear I'm not reading this book. There are so many other great nuggets. These are just the ones that resonate with me. Is the first one is also a quote is we are so blessed with an abundance of wonder on this planet and universe that we are numb to it. I totally agree with that. Like when you think about it, um, like the example in the book is like the night sky. It is amazing, but we can't forget to look at it because we have it every night in our lives. But imagine if you only saw it like as a special occasion, you'd be blown away by it. It's kind of like the Northern Lights. I haven't had the chance to see it yet, but I moved to a city where I have a higher chance of seeing it. And like for me, like that's like a bucket list. I'm sure it'll be amazing if I get to see it or when I get to see it. However, for people that live in maybe Norway and see it all the time, maybe it's not a big deal. Who knows? And to lead to this is breath is so important. To be able to breathe is to live. And I practice yoga in my personal life, and I really love just breathing practice in my yoga practice because I think we take it for granted what it means to breathe. We breathe without thinking all the time. But if you just focus on your breath, it really slows down your brain and just focuses on just the gift of being alive. And that's one thing I actually love and hate about yoga is it's only an hour, and sometimes I get distracted, I'm not present, and I think about my life outside of it. But it makes me uncomfortable and it forces me to pull in and be present, and I really love it. So I guess what I'm trying to get here is, practice breathing, practice yoga, and if you don't have the funds to do it, that's totally fine because yoga, you can do it off of YouTube. You don't have to look a certain way or have certain equipment to do yoga. You can do it anywhere, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. So, yes. And the last lesson I want to share in this busy and chaotic world of wanting to be ambitious and achieving more and more is being is more important than doing, and rest is key. Think like a dog. A dog is just happy to exist and they're never thinking about what they need to do next. Obviously, I don't totally agree with this in the sense that you don't have to be achieving and checking off things, but whatever you're doing, you should be doing because you want to do it internally and it brings you joy, not because others want you to do it, not because what society tells you to do. So it's fine if you're resting, if that's what you truly want to do and you don't feel like you're wasting your time. Again, seek that internal validation. And now I'll get to the section of the things I didn't like about this book. Even though I gave it a 5 out of 5, there's always room for constructive criticism. So things I didn't like is I do think this book is you have to read it at the right time in your life. I thought this book was great because I read it at the start of a new year, so it really set up my new year. It's also the first book of 2023. So my negative, I guess, criticism for his book is that this book can feel like one platitude and one platitude after the other. It might just feel like generalizations, and I feel if nothing resonates with you, or in a place where this book isn't the right time for you, then this book can feel very blah and very like repetitive. So yeah, and then I also think, but for me, because it comes off from Matt's personal experience with depression and suicidal tendencies, it didn't really came off that way for me because he shared his struggles in his mid 20s. That I really feel it came from a place that he is preaching to himself, and just by chance I happened to come across this journal. I'm not going to share things I liked about this book just because I felt me talking about everything that resonated with me is a clear indicator of why I love this book, so I will skip this section. On Goodreads, this book got an average of 4.1 out of 5, which I think is a great rating. Bad reviews, where I kind of touch on it, is people felt it was too repetitive. It wasn't clear why the book was divided into 4 parts. I can agree with that. There were 4 parts to the book, but you don't really know why. And also, a lot of people found the platitudes were stuff you can kind of find on social media, which I can kind of agree with. But for me, like I said, I feel this is Matt's personal journal of things that has helped him, and he had took the time to write it and collect it over the years. So I can't disagree with that, but I can see how someone sees that. Good reviews is that people are now inspired to do their own comfort book, which I think is great. I also want to share like a personal thing is that if you don't have the time or not like a physical journal person, is I actually have a Google Doc where every time someone gives me a compliment or praise, I'll actually write what they said, or I'll copy and paste if it was in a message form. And the title of my Google Doc is "Read This If You're Ever Down," because I know there'll be a point in my life that my life won't be so great, or maybe I'm struggling with self-validation, And I guess this is ironic because I'm looking at previous external validation, but it really helps, and it's great to see people in my life that were maybe once important to me or still important to me to give me praise previously. Other reason why people like it is they think it's a great nightstand book to have, especially when you're having issues sleeping at night, and it can turn to any page in this book and read during times of discomfort and anxiety. Why I think you should read this book. I think I have sold this book so well already in this video, but I think you should read it if you have depression, going through hard times, have suicidal tendencies, feel like there's no life, hope in your life. This book is just great, and I think there's something for everyone if they're going through a tough time. Now I'll share how this book made me feel, because if someone recommends a book to me, I'll always ask them how it made them feel, because a week, a year, 5 years from now, I probably won't remember exactly what was in this book, but I remember how this book made me feel. So The Comfort Book by Haig, it made me feel very hopeful. As I said before, it made me change my perspective on what hope means. And I feel that in any situation in my life, one thing that would keep me wanting to live is the idea of hope, and that life can change for the better or for worse, but it can change. Thank you for watching until the end of my review for The Comfort Book by Haig. If you read this book, I'd love to hear what resonated with you down in the comments below.